No Witchcraft for Sale by Doris. The Farkers had been childless for years when little Teddy was born, and they were touched by the pleasure of their servant, who brought presents of fowls and eggs and flowers to the homestead when they came to rejoice over the baby, exclaiming with delight over his downy golden head and his blue eyes. They congratulated Miss Farker as if she had achieved a very great thing, and she felt that she had her smile for the lingering, admiring natives was warm and grateful. Later, when Teddy had his first haircut, Gideon, the cook, picked up the soft gold turfs from the ground and held them reverently in his hand. Then he smiled at the little boy and said, "Little Yellowhead." They became the native name for the child. Gideon and Teddy were great friends from the first. When Gideon had finished his work, he would lift Teddy on his shoulders to the shade of the big tree and play with him there, forming curious little toys from twigs and leaves and grass, or shaping animals from wetted soil. When Teddy learned to walk, it was often Gideon who crouched before him, clucking encouragement, finally catching him when he fell, tossing him up in the air till they both became breathless with laughter. Miss Farker was fond of the old cook because of his love for her child. There was no second baby, and one day Gideon said, Mrs., the Lord above sent this one. Little Yellowhead is the most good thing we have in our house." Because of that, we, Mrs. Farker, felt a warm impulse toward her cook, and at the end of the month she raised his wages. He had been with her now for several years. He was one of the few natives who had his wife and children in the compound and never wanted to go home to his kraal, which was some hundreds of miles away. Sometimes a small pecanine who had been born the same time as Teddy could be seen peering from the edge of the bush, staring in out the little white boy with his miraculous fair hair and northern blue eyes. The two little children who would gaze at each other with a wide, interested gaze, and once Teddy put out his hand carelessly to touch the black child's cheeks and hair. Gideon, who was waiting, shook his head wonderingly and said, Messieurs, there are both children, and one will grow up to be a beast, and one will be a servant." And Miss Farker smiled and said sadly, "Yes, Gideon, I was thinking the same," she sighed. "It is God's will," said Gideon, who was a mission boy. The Farkers were very religious people, and this shared feeling about God bound servant and masters even closer together. Teddy was about 6 years old when he was given a scooter and discovered the enthusiasms of speed. All day he would fly around the homestead, in and out of flower beds, scattering, squawking chicken and irritated dog, finishing with the white dancing out into the kitchen door. There he would cry, "Gideon, look at me," and Gideon would laugh and say, "Very clever, little Yellowhead." Gideon's youngest son, who was now a hair's boy, came especially up from the compound to see the scooter. He was afraid to come near it, but Teddy showed up in front of him. "Pecanine," shouted Teddy. "Get out of my way!" And he was raced in circle around the black child until he was frightened and fled back to the bus. "Why did you frighten him?" asked Gideon, gravely reproachful. Teddy said defiantly, "He's only a black boy," and laughed. Then, when Gideon turned away from him without speaking, his face fell. Very soon he slipped into the house and found an orange and brought it to Gideon, saying, "This is for you." He could not bring himself to say he was sorry, but he could not bear to lose Gideon's affection either. Gideon took the orange unwillingly and sighed. "Soon you will be going loose, Gideon, away to school." "Soon you will be going away to school, little yellowhead," he said wonderingly, "and then you will be grow up." He shook his head gently and said, "And that's how our lives go. And that is how our lives go." He seemed to be putting a distance between himself and Teddy, not because of resentment, but in the way a person accepts something inevitable. The baby had lain in his arm and smiled up into his face. The tiny boy had swung from his shoulders and played with him by the hour. Now Gideon would not let his flesh touch the flesh of the white child. He was kind, but there was a grave formality in his voice that made Teddy pout and slunk away. Also, it made him into a man. With Gideon he was polite, and carried himself formally, and if he came into the kitchen to ask for something, it was in the way a white man uses toward a servant, expecting to be obeyed. But on the day that Teddy came strangling into the kitchen with his feet to his eyes, stickering with pain, Gideon dropped the pot full of hot soap that he was holding, rushed to the child, and forced aside his fingers. "A snake!" he exclaimed. Teddy had been on his scooter and had come to a rest with his foot on the side of the big top of plants. A tree snake, hanging by its tail from the roof, had spat full into his eyes. Miss Parker came running when she heard the commotion. "He'll go blind," she sobbed, holding Teddy close against her. "Gideon, he'll go blind. Already the eyes, with perhaps half an hour's sight left in them, were swollen up to the size of fists." Teddy's small, white face was distorted by great people-oozing protuberance. Gideon said, "Wait a minute, missus. I get some medicine." He ran off into the bus. Miss Farquhar lifted the child into the house and bathed his eyes with permanent. She had scarcely heard Gideon's words, but when she saw the Farquhars made inquiries about the route from their labours. Sometimes they were answered with distrustful stares. Sometimes the natives said, "We don't know. We do not know. We have never heard of the route." One, the cattle boy, who had been with them a long time, and had grown to trust them, and Gideon would double up with polite laughter. After much laughing, They would suddenly straighten himself up, wipe his old eyes, and look sadly at Teddy, who was grinning mischievously at him across the kitchen. "Ah, little yellow head, how you have grown! Soon you will be grown up with a farm of your own."